The wind came first, long before the silence of snow, before thought or time itself. It howled through the crumbling abbey walls like a voice trying to be remembered. Dr. Eleanor Crane stood beneath the broken archway, her lantern trembling in her grip, casting light on centuries of frost-bitten stone. The world beyond was a blur of white and breath. She had come to study warmth, but what she found instead was the memory of it, pressed between these stones like a pulse waiting to be touched again. Somewhere deep within the ruin, a whispering draft carried the scent of old linen and smoke. The faint residue of lives lived close, bodies bound in shared survival. Eleanor's gloved hand brushed against the damp wall, and there, beneath the thunder of wind, she felt it. The heartbeat of another time, still warm. The night swallowed the abbey whole. Eleanor sat beside the parchment, her fingers trembling with the ache of cold and discovery. The ink described not grand inventions, but gestures. How one breath warmed another. How families layered hay, wool, and skin into architecture of survival. Each word felt alive, written not for history, but for love. Outside, snow pressed against the window in a patient hush. Her laptop's battery flickered once, then died, leaving only the ancient text and the pulse of her own breathing. For the first time in years, she felt the strange intimacy of the dark, as though someone, somewhere, was still awake with her. Hours pass. In the dim hush, Eleanor begins to read aloud. Her voice, low and careful, fills the empty chamber. When the night grows colder than faith, we sleep close. For warmth is the proof that breath endures. She repeats the line, hearing Mara's cadence. The words seem to answer her own loneliness. She unrolls the parchment further. Drawings of straw mattresses, shared beds, and children nestled between parents. It is science of the soul, disguised as survival. The air feels heavier, warmer even, as though the act of remembering conjures the heat itself. That night she decides to sleep in the abbey. She layers the wool blankets from her travel bag, stacks straw she gathered from the stable, and extinguishes the candle. The dark becomes almost alive, filled with memory and faint warmth. As she lies down, the parchment rests beside her head, ink glimmering faintly in moonlight. She closes her eyes, whispering, "How did you sleep so warm, Mara?" The wind answers softly, curling through the stones, and for a fleeting moment she feels a hand upon her shoulder. Not ghostly, but human, as if time itself has drawn nearer. Dreams come like echoes. Mara's laughter, the crackle of a hearth, the rustle of hay under shared blankets. The images move through Eleanor's sleeping mind with the rhythm of a lullaby. She sees Mara turning in bed, drawing her daughter closer as snow sweeps the roof outside. Then the two women, centuries apart, breathe in sync, their hearts meeting in the hush of the same eternal night. When morning arrives, the abbey is filled not with cold, but with the ghost of warmth that lingers long after touch. Morning breaks like melted gold through fractured glass. Eleanor wakes to a quiet warmth that defies reason. The straw beneath her has dried from her body's heat. The air carries the faint scent of hay and wool. She writes in her journal, "Warmth is not in the air, but in the enclosure of breath." Her modern mind tries to categorize the sensation, but something in her refuses to dissect it. Instead, she listens to the silence that feels shared. She rises, wrapping her coat around her, and begins to recreate Mira's bedding from the notes. Each motion feels ritualistic, as though she is repairing an invisible thread between centuries. As Eleanor studies Mira's diagrams, her vision drifts to the words, "Keep the heat, keep the heart." The parchment illustrates couples and families sleeping together in close formation. She imagines them, Mira, Osric, and little Clara, wrapped in wool, bound by instinct more than comfort. The image stirs her. She realizes modern solitude is not progress, but surrender. To feel warmth, one must allow closeness. She laughs softly, thinking how history is not dead but dormant, waiting to be touched. In a flicker of recollection, the story shifts. Mayura's world breathes alive. The rhythmic hum of spinning wheels, the lowing of oxen beyond the walls, the laughter of a child before sleep. She teaches Clara how to fluff straw, how to shake linen to trap heat. "It's not warmth we make," Mayura says softly. "It's what we keep from leaving." Her words dissolve into Eleanor's whisper as she repeats them centuries later, realizing the physics of care have never changed. Back in the present, Eleanor's brother Thomas visits the abbey. He watches her rearrange layers of hay and wool, shaking his head in disbelief. "You're building a nest," he mutters. She smiles faintly. "Maybe that's what we've forgotten to do." Their conversation drifts between science and sentiment. He insists warmth comes from insulation and air pockets. She argues it's from touch and trust. Beneath their words lies a quiet ache. Two siblings who have long slept through life's shared nights apart. That evening, Eleanor conducts her first controlled test. She extinguishes the heater, layers straw beneath her bedding, and wraps herself in 2 wool blankets. The abbey grows still. Her breath fogs softly in the air. Slowly, she feels heat rising, not from fire, but from her own body reclaiming itself. She understands Mayura's secret. Warmth is not added, it's preserved. A science of presence, not of power. As she drifts towards sleep, the sound of the wind outside becomes rhythmic, like the heartbeat of the past, steady and alive. Eleanor dreams again, but this time the boundary between study and memory dissolves. She walks through Mayura's cottage as if she belongs there, hearing the soft rhythm of a spinning wheel, smelling hay, hearing Clara's distant laughter. The dream feels tactile, alive. When she wakes, the warmth lingers, though the fire has gone out. Her journal entries grow poetic, no longer analytical. "They slept in rhythm," she writes, their breath a tide that folded one life into another. The more she reads Mayura's words, the more she feels she is being read in return. Mayura's voice returns, not through ghostly speech, but through the intimacy of her daily life recorded in ink. Each night, we breathe as one. The body holds what the fire cannot. Eleanor reads it aloud, her breath clouding the air. She layers her bedding anew, mindful of the sequence Mayura described: straw, wool, linen, skin. When she lies down, she mirrors Mayura's posture, curling slightly to conserve heat. In that stillness, she imagines Clara's laughter echoing through the centuries, and for the first time since her mother's passing, she does not feel alone. Outside, a storm brews over the abbey. Eleanor writes by candlelight as thunder murmurs through the stones. Her words spill faster now, fragments of science intertwined with longing. Warmth was once a covenant, not a comfort. We trusted one another's nearness. She pauses, realizing her study has become confession. The abbey seems to breathe with her, ancient air moving in sync with her own. A sense of communion grows, not mystical, but human. Every heartbeat feels borrowed from another century. Mayura's final entries emerge from the parchment's brittle fold, pages written during a brutal winter. "We keep the warmth through loss," she wrote. "We keep it for those who will need it after." Eleanor reads the words aloud until her voice trembles. The connection becomes unbearable. One woman documenting survival as another unravels her solitude centuries later. She senses Mayura's world reaching toward hers, not as haunting but as inheritance. The warmth she feels now is not of body, but of understanding, the heat of continuity. The storm passes by dawn. Eleanor stands in the doorway, snow glittering like powdered glass. Her experiment has become pilgrimage. She feels the pull of both worlds. The scholar and the soul, the woman of paper and the woman of earth. She understands now that the question was never how they slept warm, but why they chose to share that warmth. As wind curls around her, she whispers, "It still works." The words rise like steam from breath, fading into morning. Snow falls endlessly, as though the sky has forgotten how to stop mourning. In the abbey, Eleanor's breath rises like prayer smoke. Her experiments continue, but the warmth feels thinner now, hesitant. She reads Mira's later entries and senses the onset of tragedy. The winter of 1351, when plague had already thinned the village. Mira wrote of nights when even closeness could not banish fear, when love itself was the only ember left. Eleanor's pen stills above her notes. The abbey creaks. She realizes that to study warmth is also to confront what happens when it's gone. Mira's world flickers to life again, her cottage sealed tight against the wind, her daughter's cough echoing in the night. The family sleeps close, but fear lies between them, like another body. Osric's hands tremble as he stokes the hearth. Mira watches the firelight on his face, memorizing it. If warmth is love, then we must hold it tighter, she whispers. Outside, the wind claws at the door, searching for an opening. The plague has reached their valley. Survival now is not just the keeping of heat, but the keeping of hope. Back in the abbey, Eleanor feels the echo of Mira's fear. She dreams that she is inside the weaver's cottage, watching the family vanish into breath and shadow. When she wakes, she cannot shake the cold. It seeps beneath her layers into her chest. She wraps herself tighter, heart pounding. The heater she has sworn off tempts her like sin. But she resists. Instead, she lights every candle she has and writes, "The truest warmth was never comfort. It was courage in the face of absence." Her hand trembles, but her eyes burn bright. The parchment's last pages are nearly illegible. Mira's ink faded, her words scattered. He sleeps still. One line reads, "And we keep him warm though he is gone." Eleanor presses her palm to the page, feeling the ghost of that grief as her own. She sees in Mira's story not only the loss of a husband, but the endurance of love itself. A love that refused to turn cold. Tears fall silently, absorbed by the centuries-old fibers. The air feels sacred, as if memory itself is breathing beside her. Outside, the storm breaks. Eleanor steps into the cold dawn, exhausted but alive. She feels something deep and wordless, the presence of all those who endured before her. The cold stings, but her pulse runs hot. She whispers Mira's final words to the wind. "We keep the warmth for those who will need it after." For the first time, Eleanor understands her purpose. Not to recreate the past, but to carry it forward. Behind her, the abbey's windows glow faintly, as though the past has caught fire again. Days pass beneath a softer sky. The abbey no longer feels abandoned. It hums with quiet purpose. Eleanor spends each morning rewriting Mira's words by hand, tracing every letter as though restoring heartbeat to history. She notices patterns, layered fabrics, breathing rhythms, communal placement, forming what Mira once called night-keeping. The discovery excites her not as an academic, but as a woman remembering something her bones already knew. She realizes that warmth was never invention, it was inheritance. The parchment becomes mirror, and Eleanor, its living continuation. She begins testing Mira's night-keeping methods, grouping wool layers to trap air, enclosing her bed with curtains, matching breath with a recording of her own slow exhale. The room transforms into an experiment of empathy. Each night, she notes how warmth builds differently, steadier, almost emotional. She senses that the medieval people weren't just surviving the cold. They were harmonizing with it. Her scientific language falters under the weight of feeling. She writes instead. They did not fight the night. They breathed with it. Meanwhile, Mira's story unfolds in full. A winter night where she holds Clara close after Osric's passing. The hearth has gone dark, yet she hums softly to keep her daughter's fear at bay. It is the breath that warms us, she whispers, so long as we share it. In that moment, the idea of night-keeping takes its truest form. Warmth as communion, grief as proof of love. When Eleanor reads this passage, she understands that Mira's warmth was never purely physical. It was defiance against oblivion. Eleanor decides to translate Mira's night-keeping into modern language, not as folklore, but as living knowledge. She writes tirelessly, her desk littered with sketches, notes, and fragments of wool. Thomas visits again, drawn by her renewed energy. They talk long into the night. She tells him that warmth was once a shared trust, the art of coexisting with the cold, not escaping it. Thomas listens, skeptical but softened. He stays the night beside the fire, sharing her warmth for the first time in years. The silence between them is no longer empty, but full. By dawn, Eleanor completes her manuscript. Her fingers are ink-stained, her heart steady. The final line reads, "Warmth is not found, it is made and remade between us." She exhales, feeling centuries of voices breathe with her. The abbey fills with early light, gold, touching every corner once frozen. She realizes the experiment has succeeded, not because she replicated a medieval night, but because she rediscovered the reason they survived it. She steps outside, snow melting under her boots, carrying with her a warmth that will not fade. Weeks later, the abbey hums with life again. Eleanor has transformed the ruin into a living laboratory, a fusion of science and memory. She invites a small group of volunteers to join her. Students, locals, a few strangers curious about the past. They come bearing wool, curiosity, and laughter that feels startlingly new within ancient stone. Eleanor guides them gently, showing how to layer bedding, how to let breath fill the air with warmth. The abbey becomes what it once was, a haven of shared survival. For the first time in centuries, it is warm again. That evening, they conduct the first communal sleep trial. Each participant lies beneath layered quilts, their breath slowly synchronizing in the hush. Eleanor keeps watch for a while, listening to the rhythm of many lungs, moving as one. It feels like a human tide returning. For centuries, warmth had been outsourced to machines. Now, it was reclaimed by trust. Eleanor notes the room temperature, lower than comfort by modern measure, yet every sleeper rests peacefully. The data is beautiful, but the feeling is sacred. Later, as night deepens, Eleanor joins them. She lies between two students, uncertain at first, then surrendering to stillness. The breath beside her mingles with her own. A warmth blooms, subtle, human, collective. She thinks of Mira's words. It is the breath that warms us, so long as we share it. In that shared silence, 6 centuries dissolve. The abbey no longer feels like stone and air, but like a living chest, its heart beating through every body inside. Morning light seeps through the ancient arches. The group wakes slowly, smiling, surprised at how warm they feel. Eleanor laughs with them, not as lecturer, but as participant. Thomas arrives carrying coffee, teasing her about having started a medieval sleep cult. She smiles, unbothered. If it keeps people warm, maybe that's enough. Her words hang in the air, honest and unpretentious. The abbey smells of wool and laughter, a scent that feels like home. That night, Eleanor writes her final report. But this time she includes something science rarely admits, that data alone cannot explain the comfort of being near another living heart. Her closing statement reads, "We have forgotten how to keep each other warm, but not how to learn again." She sends it to her university, closes her laptop, and looks around the Abbey one last time. In the hush, she almost hears Mira's voice. Not words, but a sigh of contentment carried through the centuries. Spring breathes through the ruins. The Abbey, once frozen, now hums with life. Birds in the rafters, moss bright on the stones. Eleanor returns one last time to gather her notes. The volunteers have gone, their laughter lingering like incense in the air. She walks the familiar path between shadow and sunlight, her hand brushing the wall where she first found Mira's box. It feels different now, not cold, but stored with warmth that outlasts centuries. She realizes the Abbey doesn't keep history. It keeps memory, and memory, if held close enough, can still burn. Back at Oxford, Eleanor presents her findings. Colleagues listen politely as she explains night keeping, layering, breath synchronization, the physics of communal heat. But when she concludes, she abandons her slides. "What?" "They understood," she says softly. "Is that warmth is not a number. It's a bond." The room falls silent. A young student in the front row whispers, "Can we try it?" Eleanor smiles, realizing the ember has already passed from her hands into theirs. That night, Eleanor returns to her flat. The city hums outside, restless and modern. She turns off her radiator, layers her bed with wool and linen, and opens the window a crack to let the cool air kiss her face. As she lies down, she feels the soft rhythm of her own breath, returning to the pattern she learned from Mira's pages. The sound of distant traffic fades, until it might as well be whined through thatched eaves. She closes her eyes and whispers, "Good night, Mira." For the first time, the silence feels full. Elsewhere, people begin to follow her lead. Students try medieval nights in dormitories. Families rediscover comfort without electricity. The movement spreads, not as trend, but as quiet rebellion. Eleanor's article becomes a story shared by word of mouth, how they slept so warm, and why it still works. In small bedrooms and cold cottages, people once again learn the old art of shared warmth. The world, in its quietest corners, begins to breathe together. In the film's final image, the Abbey stands silent beneath spring rain. The camera drifts inside, where Mira's journal rests upon the altar, its pages fluttering gently. A droplet lands, blurring a single line. "Keep the warmth for those who will need it after." The rain glistens like silver fire. Eleanor's voice carries over. "They did, and we still do." The sound fades into the rhythm of soft breath. One drawn centuries ago, the other drawn now. A continuity unbroken.